Okay, now we're live. I think the stream was getting a little weird and it was telling me I was not live, and sure enough, I found myself seeing that I was live. And isn't that just fun when nothing works? Hi, it's me, John, and we're doing another big stream. I'm once again having to use just this webcam stream. I can't share my screen. I'm so sorry. I wish I could. Unfortunately, every time I do this, the audio just cannot handle it. I am working on it, but going now we are live, so we can have some people join in on the fun. As you saw from the thumbnail and the description, of course, I am going to be talking about Christopher Nolan because he lives rent free in my head. He's all I think about, honestly. He's just the most important filmmaker. No, I'm just genuinely very, very aware of what is going on with the HBO Max and Warner Brothers situation, and I want to make some clarifying comments of my own on the situation. So there is a Washington doubling down essentially on his comments. If you need a refresher, basically for Nolan, he ain't happy. He is feeling like the theatrical model is being murdered with a hatchet. That's me. That's my phrasing. By Warner Brothers because of their decision last week or week and however many days to release their theatrical releases, their big budget films, Dune and Matrix 4 and Godzilla and Kong and all of that, all 17 of their major films next year, releasing them on HBO Max the same day they hit theaters. And Christopher Nolan ain't happy about that. So I'm going to bring up the article now. I actually had the article prepared and then I accidentally closed it because I am an amateur. But we're going to bring it up back now. So like I said, this is on the Washington Post, and it is not showing up the article I'm trying to find. That is how we do things, I guess. Oh, there it is. Okay. So the headline here, Christopher Nolan objects to Warner Brothers release plan, but he's happy you can watch Tenet at home. So the headline, it sounds nice, right? It's like, oh, wow, Nolan, Warner Brothers, they're getting along. I don't know about that. I think he is happy that people are going to watch it at home, if only because he knows a lot of people just didn't watch it in the theater. So he's probably feeling right now like, finally, people are joining in and they're going to be watching the movie he worked pretty hard on. But okay, so here's this article. There may be no stranger time to make big movies, and nobody makes them bigger than writer-director Christopher Nolan. Yeah, very important to point out, Christopher Nolan is a bit of a unicorn in the current Hollywood model of filmmaking. There are very few people like him who can just show up and make an original film, not based on any existing IP, and have it make $1 billion or more. He was able to do it with Inception, of course. He did, of course, do it on IP projects like The Dark Knight and everything. But that said, he is known for a very particular aesthetic. I'd say like another filmmaker similar to him who has been able to pull off some things similar to that would, of course, be James Cameron of Titanic and Avatar and what have you. Oh, but okay. What's going on, Chris? What are we talking about here? His films, Interstellar, Inception, Memento, twist time and space in the conventions of traditional cinema. Yeah, they sure do. They also bend budgets. With his latest Tenet rolling in at $205 million, it's more than that, by the way, which might be part of why so much of the film's released, both in theaters in September and on DVD on December 15th, that's right, you can watch it today, has been centered on the tenuous state of an industry crushed by COVID-19 shutdowns. A few things I do want to comment on here. Like I kind of whispered earlier, the Tenet cost a lot more than $205 million between marketing and just remember, this is the number that studios told us. They never tell us the real number. They just don't. And, can you blame them? They don't want their investors to freak out. But there are all kinds of costs associated with making a movie that don't really make it to these numbers. And you kind of have to, as a rule, assume that it is a lot more than $205 million. If I had to guess, it was at least $300 million after all said and done, which means a movie like Tenet, to be tenable, would have to make something like, gosh, like $700-800 million just to really like recoup the initial investment. That's why $1 billion films are like so in demand by Hollywood. That's why they're obsessed with churning out, rechurning out IP, things that intellectual property, things that people know is going to be successful and guaranteed hit. Because if it doesn't make $1 billion, they're not really making money, and they need that money to fund a lot of the other movies that come out that don't make that much money. Sorry, like there's like a shadow of my eyes. I'm trying not to be too mysterious, but there's not much I can do about that. But okay, so yeah, like it says here, the budget, of course, is a big consideration for how they're going to be releasing this. The reason why they wanted to put it out in theaters, and they were hoping, as cases were winding down, people would show up, and they just really didn't. A lot of people were still feeling unsafe. They were feeling like they shouldn't be going to the theater. And Tenet did okay internationally, but it's definitely not the big success story that Nolan obviously wanted. I think he cares more about like people watching his films than he cares about like the money of it all. That's my personal take. But I think Warner Brothers, of course, is really looking at this as like, what did we do wrong here? And is there a way that we could have released Tenet in a fashion that would have gotten our investment back? Because it is a very complicated situation. I know some people might look at it and they might say, you know what, just wait. Just wait. Hold off on Tenet. Unfortunately, it just doesn't quite work that way. They're still losing a ton of money that they would have otherwise made, that they chart out their course, their financial course very early on. And if they don't get anything out of Tenet, even if it's not the optimal one, it's better than nothing. And they of course have other films that they need to allot their time and resources to in the upcoming years, particularly as they're going to be trying to revamp production for films in a quicker clip as this next year goes. They've had a lot of issues with that, of course, with films like the Batman, the Robert Pattinson version, getting halted because there was a coronavirus case that happened on set. I think multiple people might have gotten it. But so that is the situation we're in. Let's see what's Nolan. What does he got to say? Nolan's plan for the digital rollout of Tenet was to talk mainly about the home release of his 11th film. Warner Brothers wishes home, but in his like British accent. And I can totally understand that as somebody who really wanted that to happen for this movie. I've heard it's not. I still haven't seen it. Maybe I'll watch it today. How about that? We'll take a look at it today, maybe. I won't live stream that though because I don't want to get kicked off of YouTube. But okay, so that was what he was supposed to do. But what did he do? But instead, Christopher Nolan finds himself blasting his own studio, Warner Brothers, for its decision to kick its entire slate of 2021 films to HBO Max. Yeah, not what you want when you're a publicist or you work for HBO Max, Warner Brothers, AT&T. You don't want one of your like prestige, most high-profile, household name directors trashing your entire business model. That's not great. That's not something that you want. This isn't about money, he says. Nolan believes the studio is not only making a business mistake in shifting Dune, Matrix X, is that the name of it now? Okay, and 15 other films to the streaming service, it is betraying the filmmakers. Wow, harsh words. I think in one instance, I have talked about this before in a previous stream, it is betraying the filmmakers, the way that they handled this. Whatever you think of this move from HBO Max, if you think it's a great idea even, what they did, like springing this on the filmmakers and not really giving them like any sort of say in like this entire thing and not giving them any notice and them basically finding out at the same time as everybody else, that's pretty messed up. These are the people who are making the content, they should have more say. They should have a little, I just think this philosophically, that if you are a really big earner for these film studios, like it is absurd to me that they were treated in this fashion. They were sort of treated as expendable when they're not. The studios really need them, particularly people like Christopher Nolan, because he, routinely puts out films that are pretty successful for Warner Brothers. He declined to say how the HBO Max decision will impact his long-term relationship with Warner Brothers. Of course, he's not going to get into that. Not unless he has like a backup plan, which I don't think he does. I think right now he is trying to pressure and create a situation where his demands met and he has leverage. And I don't think his like plan A is to ditch Warner Brothers. If it was, I would almost expect him to be kind of sniffy about this, but not this sniffy to lure them into a false sense of security. But no, he wants to turn the screws on them, show him who's boss. You know what I mean? Okay, so Warner Brothers, which declined to comment for this story. In a wide-ranging discussion, he talked about the making of Tenet, a mind-bending take on the James Bond films that stars John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki, and Kenneth Branagh, as well as his writing process, philosophy on movie making, yada, yada, yada. Tom Jones just published a book, walks Nolan through his catalog, offering both irrelevant. Oh, wow. So full disclosure, I just brought this article up. I did not read it in advance. I'm going through it with you. It's a discovery process. But I did not know that this was actually like an interview. So surprise to me. Okay, question. I don't think people understand because of how much discussion took place about the theatrical release that in some ways this is the real release of Tenet in the United States. Back in September, hardly any theaters were actually open for business. So I think this is Christopher Nolan responding. With all of the adversity in the world for 2020 affecting people in all kinds of horrendous ways, we were very lucky, very privileged to be able to release the film in parts of the world that managed the virus with appropriate response and then figure out ways to safely reopen theaters. Yeah, somebody who lives in America, it is absolutely infuriating to me when I see these videos of like people in Australia who have like almost 0 cases being able to walk around and do their normal life, whereas I've been shut in for 9 months because I don't want to get people sick. You know, it really is a frustrating thing. And I can see why Christopher Nolan would kind of look at the rest of the world and be like, if only the big money was internationally. I mean, they make money internationally, but it is definitely at a different scale, which is why we've seen these films being put off and put off. Where was I? I almost lost my place. Which sends a very positive message about the future of exhibition for when things can reopen safely and all the rest. Sure. Unfortunately, and I think it's about to get into this, I just don't think that's going to be a near future thing for the US. In the United States, we were never able to release the film properly. I say here because I'm sitting in Los Angeles, and obviously to not open in your hometown and not be able to market the film because the studio was obviously hoping that Los Angeles and New York would open if the virus receded, which obviously has not happened, did not happen. The reality is there's people in the world with real problems. This is a pretty trivial concern about the release of the film. But delving more into it, I'm a kid of the home video generation, and so we've all, myself in particular, spent many years working with the studios on technical strategies of how to maximize image and sound quality for presentation, how we get it out there in that form, and everything. 2 things on that. First of all, please bring that Christopher Nolan to the big screen too, because you nail it in almost every way, and I know this has been brought up to death, except for your sound mixing. I mean, the sound mixing in general is pretty good, but tell me if you've had this experience where you're trying to watch a Christopher Nolan thing and you have no idea what people are saying. This has been a huge, huge sticking point. As somebody who is disabled hearing-wise, like I have to have subtitles when I watch his movies, and I don't mind subtitles. I'm very used to them. As somebody, I have to use subtitles for the most part anyway. It is a frustrating experience. I know for a lot of people who aren't used to subtitles and they don't want them, and they're not able to really like discern what's being said on the screen, especially if this is a time-bendy James Bond. You don't really want a lot of that exposition to just sort of like wash over people. I think it's a big reason why, even though Inception worked really well for a lot of people, it was kind of, it has this reputation for being very hard to follow. And I do think a lot of that is the dialogue. So I'm just saying, yeah, a lot of hard work. I know tons of really talented engineers put a ton of hard work into making the home video presentation as great as it is. So yeah, credit there where it's due. Second thing, though, where he's kind of talking about how this is like a trivial concern, like the grand scheme of things. I've been hard on Nolan. I really have. But I feel like, okay, at least he's saying that, even though I do get the sense that this entire thing is very PR skewed. I don't know where I land exactly. Like, I feel like he's been fed some talking points and he's following some of them, but then he's sticking to his convictions on others. That's my impression. I could be totally way off. For all intents and purposes, I do probably have more reason to believe that Nolan really is going off book here and he's kind of just doing his own thing. But you never know. And also it could be his agent, kind of saying like, hey, massage your criticism of Warner Brothers with maybe some more empathetic, more humanizing, tell the people what they want to hear sort of language. That's my speculation, idle as it is. Okay, so there's another question here. As I understand it, the idea for 10 years ago, okay, yeah, we don't really care about that right now, sorry. A bit about process. Oh yeah, I did hear about this where he talks about how Christopher Nolan, he apparently like gets his emails like typed out to him or something. I don't know. That's very strange stuff. He's very analog, Christopher Nolan. They're talking more about the movie too. I don't care about this stuff. Kind of scrolling down here. Let's see if we can skip to the general commentary. I'm wondering if he's not really going to get into it. Oh, here we go. To go back to the business side of things. It's a long interview. You've been very outspoken about the way this HBO Max decision went down. I do like how the interviewer here kind of starts off and is like bringing this up, and then lets Nolan wax poetic about Tenet and do his whole speech. And now he's kind of bringing it back to like the thing, we care about. Not that we don't care. Okay, yeah, we care about the other stuff too. I care about, Nolan's process, but right now I don't. Sorry. Okay. So Christopher Nolan says here, the studio needed to collaborate with the filmmakers on what was going to happen. True. They didn't speak to the filmmakers. They didn't speak to the theater chains. They didn't speak to the production partners on the films. That was the reason I was speaking up. As far as the specific strategy of what you would be doing over the entirety of next year, I don't know why anyone would be making predictions through to December of 2021 on what they should or shouldn't be doing with the business. That seems a long way out in a fast-changing dynamic situation. I do think that's half true. It's like, yes, we don't know what things are going to look like at the end of 2021. We really don't. And Warner Brothers doesn't know. Of course, it's crossed their mind. Of course, it's been on the table for them that we could just maybe do like half measures until we know for sure. The problem is it's a business, and businesses can't just sort of fly by the seat of their pants. They have to tell investors and stakeholders something. And if they just keep sort of kicking the can down the road and being like, we don't have a plan, we're just gonna go with whatever happens, investors are going to get scared, and it's going to hurt their bottom line. AT&T is not going to be happy with that. So they do have to have some semblance of a plan. And right now they're opting for what seems to them to be the ideal, most risk averse situation, where they put everything out on streaming so that even if the theater shut down, they still have an avenue and they still have a way to market these films ahead of time without people being confused about where they can watch these things. So let me give you an example. Let's say that the virus does start to recede. Maybe the vaccine starts rolling out in a lot of places. Cases start going down. It's great. Super happy about that, right? And let's say the streaming plan isn't, in effect. So the streaming thing isn't going on. People are seeing trailers and they're seeing ads for things on YouTube. They're seeing a trailer for, let's say, Dune, and they're like, I can't wait to see Dune in the theater. Can't wait to see Dune in the theater. And that's the only way they're going to be able to see it. But then coronavirus cases, for whatever reason, start spiking back up. Whatever, we find out something went wrong and the vaccine doesn't work. Some ridiculous thing like that. We could speculate all day. But for whatever reason, cases spike again, and all the theaters have to shut down again. And Warner Brothers, which in this hypothetical scenario, they are now in a situation where if they take the movie out, they lose a ton of money, which they can't afford to, or they release it on streaming. But then if they release it on streaming with almost no gear up, it's not ready. They don't have time to roll it out. People are confused. They have to spend a ton of extra money on marketing just to make people aware. So you see what I'm saying? It's the whole idea is that you do both things. And if the theater thing blows out and they can't do that anymore, they still have the streaming thing and they're still able to market the thing. And of course, they care a lot about HBO Max. And they really want subscribers. To me, it does, from a business perspective, make a ton of sense, no matter the consequences. So I think in some ways, Nolan's being a little coy here when he's trying to act like he doesn't understand how businesses work. And he doesn't seem to, he's kind of acting like it's this very obvious common sense. We don't know what's going to happen. Well, of course we don't. But that is how it works in this industry. You have to have a backup plan for your backup plan. And right now, they are looking at 2021, and it still is a huge question mark. It's a hope for the best, expect the worst situation. Okay. So, this is an interesting question. So, when Tenet was originally released, you got some criticism for the decision to do at least a partial opening in theaters. Looking back, do you wish that could have gone differently? So what are you going to say to that, Christopher Nolan? He got a lot of heat for this. Rightfully so. A lot of people looked at Nolan's comments and his real push to put Tenet in theaters as not ideal and something that really felt needlessly aggressive. It felt like it was being callous to the lives of people who would be putting themselves at risk and catching an infectious virus just to watch a movie. And it wasn't great PR, gotta say. And this is what Christopher Nolan says to that. The studio made the decision to release the film in the summer in parts of the world where it was safe to open the film because of the response to the pandemic in those individual countries. He's repeating himself here. That is kind of confirming my speculation earlier, which was this is based off of a script. These are talking points. I would assume they come probably from his agent approved. I don't know if he is in a good enough position with Warner Brothers right now for it to really come from them, but maybe so. He could also be grabbing this from a script I'm not aware of. Like he's probably already used the statement before, but yes, this reads completely like robotic. He has to put out this line before he says anything else. He's probably been coached on this. And I think they made a good decision. Nolan continues. A lot of people got to see the film. A lot of people went back to work and all the rest and were able to safely do that. The country is a different story. This country is a different story. But Hollywood filmmaking is a global business. It's not an American-only business. True. And I think it's very important for people to look beyond where they are sitting in the world and look at what's going on in the rest of the world as well and be mindful of that. Globalism, baby. I agree, Christopher Nolan. It is a little ridiculous to me how self-centered America can really be in terms of like how these things happen. And I mean, just look at the output of films that have happened internationally in this past year. It's actually really impressive. And if you look, I think at like the highest grossing films of 2020, you're like Chinese films. And yeah, I definitely, he makes a good point here. It's an interesting pivot off the question, right? The question is sort of leading toward do you feel guilty for being a little bit of a, but he kind of answers it with being like, well, you're able to do it in other countries and it worked out there. And he kind of sidesteps like what went down here in America. So it says here, there were people who seemed to think, Christopher Nolan, you could have stopped the studio from the theatrical release at that moment. He says, of course not. Look at what's just happened. They've just unilaterally shifted their entire distribution pattern on their slate without talking to even the financing partners. Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. Like, there's no question in my mind that Warner Brothers could have stopped the theatrical release without Nolan's say-so, but it's called being handled, to quote Toph from Avatar: The Last Airbender. They do not want to royally piss off Christopher Nolan, who is one of their prized directors, without really good reason. And it does beggar the imagination of like why they weren't willing to do that in August when Tenet was rolling out. I guess they just really wanted that money, and it was really on them. Over why they did this to Nolan now and not really talk to him before this decision. And I think it's because this decision is way more of a reaction to that one. And I think that they made the decision they felt like they had no reason to share it ahead of time, which, boo on them. That's not great. Even the interviewer here is being a mensch and saying it's probably frustrating. Like, isn't that human? The first time around, you got sucked into this whole idea of Tenet being some kind of test case for the COVID era in cinema. Now, this HBO Max deal arrives as you head out to promote the DVD. I do appreciate the irony of that timing. Yeah. So Christopher Nolan says, yes, it certainly would be nice to get back to being able to just put a film out there and promote the film in a more simple way. First world problems. But the world's been very complicated for 2020. True. And there are people dealing with the most appalling circumstances. Very true. Well, I'm glad you said that. I honestly just feel very, very lucky to have been working to get to a point where we can now have people in Los Angeles, New York, other places in North America see the film. So that's the end of the interview. I got to say, this feels a lot like Damage Control. And the reason I kind of feel like it's more Christopher Nolan's agent talking than some sort of like thing he's talking about with Warner Brothers is because it's still layered with a lot of like snipes at Warner Brothers that I don't think that they would abide. That said, their PR structure is probably so complicated. I could actually see some of their publicists being like, well, you got to keep the criticism going a little bit because otherwise people are going to see right through it. So sure, that's a possibility. But no, I do think that Christopher Nolan has like a team of people who are coaching him through this and are being like, look, man, if you're going to criticize Warner Brothers, this is an optics game. And you cannot look like the asshole here because if you do, it's going to create a lot of problems for you down the road. And I'm sure he does have that on his mind if he has to leave Warner Brothers. Who would he leave Warner Brothers for? Good question. Right? Because he can't go to Netflix. Netflix won't make him happy. I mean, I'm sure he could ink a deal with Netflix that has like theatrical exclusivity, but Netflix isn't going to give him the window that he wants ever. I don't see it. Netflix does have a passion for like buying these like niche theaters and stuff and like putting things out, but they do not like putting out movies in theaters when they're not available on Netflix at the same time, which is totally antithesis to what Nolan wants. Sony probably can't afford him, but I mean, that is a possibility. I don't know if Sony has the cachet to really bring him on and give him what he wants. So Disney is your next step there. And I don't know about Disney. I could see like a Searchlight 20th Century thing really tapping in, but those budgets are so small. And Disney's not known for films that really fit the mold of like these big budget prestige pictures. So Fox could have at a certain point, but not in the last several years where they really have like they leaned as they were winding down. If it was not like a superhero thing, they really like leaned more down to like the mid-sized budget stuff. So I really don't know. I really don't know what studio would fit Christopher Nolan better. And I think he knows that. I think he knows that Warner Brothers really is like, that's his Goldilocks right there. And it is kind of for us because I think that Warner Brothers does have a certain filmmaking panache that really just fits like the Nolan sentimentality, the Nolan aesthetic. And I guess I couldn't really see it anywhere else. That said, it could happen. The only other streamer that I could potentially see really latching onto him, not A24, I'm sorry. I know some of you are thinking it, but no, not A24, but Amazon Studios actually, because Amazon, they are poised to, even though they don't have these huge movies right now, they really do more like indie fare and they do smaller things that hit their service. They do have what Netflix doesn't, which is that sort of like exclusivity window where they were rolling out films like way before you could watch them on the service. And they would come to festivals like Sundance and all of those, and they would come and they would acquire the rights to things and they would market them. And, you know, they've had mixed success. I think 2016 was a great year for them. They really nailed it there. But in other years, like, yeah, they've struggled a bit to really like capture pop cultural relevance with like relevance with like awards films, I guess. This year has been good for them. I think like with small acts, you know, and you know the empowering nature of what they gave Steve McQueen. Yeah, you know, the more I think about it, I think Amazon Studios. If I had to put money on any of like the studios at all, I think Amazon actually would probably fit his bill a little bit. He'd probably have to scale back. He probably wouldn't be able to do the same budgets he does, but it would probably be a better situation. If he wants those budgets, he has to go to Disney. But I don't think Disney even has the imagination to dream up like a Christopher Nolan thing, unless it was like IP, which Nolan's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna want to do that. I think he's done with things like Batman, you know, and I struggle to think of something that they could do that would be different. It's kind of the same story with Denis Villeneuve. I think he's somebody who he's kind of like the, you know, Christopher Nolan, like adjacent. I really respect Denis Villeneuve, though. I probably like more of his films than I like Nolan's films. It's probably really close, actually. But, you know, whenever I see one of his movies, I never get the sense that I do with Nolan, where it's like a larger than life, you know, only this filmmaker could have made this at this like level. And I'm talking only about technical stuff. Denis Villeneuve makes incredible films with fantastic stories, and he makes small films, you know, or seemingly small films like Sicario is a good example. And then he can make like a sweeping sci-fi like Arrival, and then he can make like a unbelievably, I think his most Nolan film would be Blade Runner 2049 by far. And a lot of people are looking at Dune in the same fashion. But yeah, like I said before, that's a very Warner Brothers thing. And I don't know if like could you imagine Amazon making like a Dune? I can't. But okay, that's everything I have to say about the Christopher Nolan HBO Max thing as we know it. He's still really he's laying into HBO and Warner Brothers, but can you blame him? Thank you for listening. This has been The Big Stream. I am John Negroni. Don't forget to listen to the main show, Cinemaholics, every week. We have a new episode coming out in a few days. And we just came out with our latest show episode where we talked about, gosh, what did we talk about? I already forgot. We talked about The Prom. Oh, man, that was fun. We talked about The Prom and a whole bunch of other films. It was great. And we talked about this stuff as well, topical things. You can find that on Apple Podcasts. Just find Cinemaholics and check it out. I am out of here.